Opposites attract, don't they? But they can also annoy. So today we're going to talk about the fun side of being different from your spouse. But before we dive in today, I want to hear from you. I want to know what's happening in your marriage. The quirks, the funny differences, the not so funny differences, the strengths that show up in your marriage, the challenges, and those mismatches that make your relationship uniquely yours. And since today's episode is all about differences, tell me this. What opposite traits do you and your spouse bring into this marriage? And which one makes you laugh the most? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every one of them. And who knows, maybe your story will inspire a future episode. So let's dive into today's topic. One person in the marriage might wake up ready to conquer the world. The other one believes that no major decisions should be made before 10 a.m., right? And certainly not before a nice big cup of coffee. One spouse plans a vacation using spreadsheets and packing lists. That would be me. The other one might toss a few things into a bag and say, let's just figure it out when we get there. Definitely this is a difference between Jeff and I. He has a list here and sometimes he writes it out, but he's packing at the last minute. I've been packing for days. I've got the suitcase out on the spare bed and I've got my list made. I've got things that I've been, dumping in the suitcase all along as I think about them, all to be, organized later. But if we're leaving out in the morning for a trip, he's packing tonight. And often after I've already gone to bed and can't sleep till he's in, next to me. So now he's keeping me awake doing his packing. And that's just how it is in marriage, isn't it? One thrives on Friday night to, looks forward all week to the weekend to be able to go out and hang out with friends and socialize. And the other one's like, oh man, I'm so looking forward to a quiet evening. Let's dim the lights down, grab a book that I haven't read in, been able to read for days or weeks, maybe a glass of wine, right? Just completely different outlooks on what the weekend should look like. And in the beginning of a relationship, these differences can feel really, really attractive and magnetic, pulling together, right? Like, wow, you're so different than me. That's so intriguing. And it can feel charming. But over time, what happens? Those exact same traits can start to really cause friction and rub against each other. So what once felt intriguing now becomes stressful. We go from, oh, I love their spontaneity to, why didn't they tell me that they made plans for tonight? How come I wasn't given any, warning? What once felt grounding, I love how steady my partner is, becomes frustrating. Do we really need a 4-step plan just to, go out for brunch? Right? So today we're going to take a playful, honest look at some of these differences, the ones that sometimes annoy us, yes, and and to realize that they're not flaws in your marriage. They happen to everybody, but they're actually invitations or opportunities to grow, to balance one another out, and to understand each other better. So welcome back to the High Ticket Woman. I'm Debbie Colwood, your host. And that's what we're going to talk today about. We're going to explore something every couple experiences, the reality of doing life with someone who's wired very differently than you. Not wired wrong, not wired in a difficult way, and you're the easy way, just different. And when you understand the purpose behind those differences, then you can move from frustration to harmony and humor and balance. That's what we want. All right. So, one of the biggest differences that I see couples having to navigate is the what we'll call the energy divide. And this is the difference between introverts and extroverts. Now, neither's better. There's not a right way or a wrong way to be. Neither is more mature than the other. It just really truly comes down to how energy is managed. I like to think of this as everybody carries an invisible backpack around, and how do they charge that backpack up, or, backpack of a battery pack is what I'm trying to say, an invisible battery pack. Okay, so an introvert comes home from a long day, at work, lots of interaction with team members and meetings, etc. And all they want is quiet and calm and stillness and some time alone to recharge the batteries. Their extroverted spouse comes home wanting to talk, wanting to connect, to unpack the day, to catch up emotionally. And both of you are coming from a very sincere place. Both of you are trying to reconnect, but you're doing it differently. So, what's actually happening? The introvert isn't trying to reject their partner, and the extrovert isn't intending to overwhelm. Both of you are simply trying to recover in your own way. Now, once you see that pattern and it's obvious to you that that's what's happening, yeah, at that point, it can be something you laugh about. Now, Jeff and I, we're more alike on this than different. I'm the extrovert, but only mildly so, and Jeff is quite introverted. So both of us has that same need for, at the end of a long day of working with clients, I'm really talked out. That works fine with Jeff because he doesn't mind. He needs his own quiet time and his own space and time in his cave with his computer, and so that works for us. But the more extreme these differences, the more patient you have to be with each other, right? So you have to communicate over this. You have to be able to say, "Hey, when I get home, I need 20 minutes of just silence, or 30, or 45." And your partner, whichever one they are, the extrovert, I need 20 minutes or 30 or 40. I need some time for us to have conversation. I need to connect. So let's figure out a way to meet in the middle on this. The introvert in the marriage brings calm. The extrovert brings energy. And together you build a dynamic that, honestly, neither of you could have created alone. You need both of those. Okay. Now, let's just stop for a moment and say, let's say you recognize that this is definitely a challenge in your marriage and that this difference has created some distance. And your wiring styles in terms of this, difference in energy and how it's handled is causing collision and conflict instead of complementing each other. This is the time to do something about this. You don't wanna wait years and years and years of trying to, resolve this only to come away from all of that, all of those efforts going, "My partner doesn't get me, and they never will." This is the kind of work that I do with couples inside Marriage in Bloom. You need to be able to communicate that you're the one who needs silence and why you need silence, or that you need that conversation and why you need that. You need to be able to honor each other's wiring rather than like fighting over that. And those old patterns that have built up so much frustration, they need to be turned into new patterns of connection and communication. And so if you want to know more about this, you can go to debbiecaudle.com/marriage in bloom. All right. Now let's keep going. Let's talk about another difference that often shows up in marriage: the planners versus the spontaneous types. Now, I am definitely the planner in my marriage. Jeff leans more towards the spontaneous, but we're not extremes on these ends. So he shares some qualities with me in this. But again, a lot of people can be very different in this way. So some individuals feel safest when life is structured. I'm definitely one of those people. And others feel more alive when life is open ended. I don't wanna be locked into a deadline or a schedule or a routine. Imagine those 2 people coming together and falling in love and the possible conflict that could arise out of this, right? A planner needs time, order, advance notice. They don't do really well with spontaneity and impulsivity and, dropping everything at the last minute or doing something at the last minute. Whereas the spontaneous partner, they do like that. They love the adventure of just, let's just see where today leads or where the moment leads. The planner, for example, let's use an example. Let's say the planner in the marriage wants to make a dinner reservation and they want to do it days in advance because they want to make sure it happens and that it's on their calendar and they can mentally prepare, for the dinner or if it's me, I'm gonna be like, oh, what I'm gonna wear. I'm like, pick out a few different outfits if it's a fancy dinner, right? So I want to be able to plan and prepare for that. Well, let's say I'll use Jeff as the example. Let's say that Jeff's like, "Ugh, why do we gotta do this days in advance? That kinda kills the mood, kinda kills the fun, right? What if we just explore and see what we're in the mood for the day of?" Well, neither method is wrong, really. Both of us would be using a strategy that makes each of us feel grounded, but the strategies are different, okay? Again, when you embrace this difference, you recognize that the planner brings stability, the spontaneous spouse brings fun, adventure, joy, excitement. And not to say that those of us who are planners don't, but together we can create experiences that feel both safe and exciting. All right. The planner ensures that things actually happen, the reservation actually gets made. The spontaneous spouse ensures that they are enjoyable and that we haven't sucked all the life out of it by over planning it. All right. Another difference that is so common in marriage, morning people versus night owls. Now, Jeff and I are both more night owl ish. Although as we get older, we're not burning the candle, really, really late. Um, you know, but still, we definitely are not morning people. But again, this contrast shows up a lot and it can show up not just daily, but even hourly. So for example, the morning person is energized early. I mean, they're the kind of people who are up at 4, 5, 6 a.m. and sleeping in, right? And they are full of life. They're ready to talk, ready to start the day. The night owl is super slow to warm up in the morning. They might be grumpy in the morning. They're more alert and creative midday, right? Or later in the day, or their creativity may not even happen until the evening. They come alive and their brain wakes up at night when their partner is, ready to go to sleep. The morning person is ready to discuss, hey, what are we going to do today before breakfast? The night owl wants to discuss tomorrow's plans right as their partner is falling asleep. Now, again, this doesn't have to be a problem. Different rhythms don't mean that you're incompatible. It just means that you need intentional shared time, a window of time to discuss things that honors both of you. So maybe we're going to talk over lunch. There's a gift here that's hidden in the difference because these mismatched rhythms help you to build patience and empathy and flexibility and creativity in your communication. Unfortunately, a lot of times what I see is you've got to be more like me. You've got to do it my way. Your way is stupid and dumb and lazy. And we attach all these labels to these differences, labels that are hurtful and harmful. And instead of seeing them as opportunities to understand and appreciate and be grateful for those differences and how they'd helped you grow as a couple. Okay, so why do opposites balance each other out? Well, when you stop resisting those differences and you start appreciating them, things begin to stretch and shift. Okay. I like to think, I like to use the metaphor of a rubber band because, a rubber band is at its most useful when it is stretched, right? So those differences help to reveal blind spots in us. They challenge us to grow, they stretch us. You know, they help us to stay grounded in ways where we might otherwise be prone to drift. For example, 2 planners, if you're a planner and you're married to a planner, you might have a very stressful marriage, right? You might never relax, right? Because 'Cause you're always, to the nth degree planning everything out, which can create stress and tension. Whereas 2 really super spontaneous types might never plan ahead. There's no plan at all, right? So we're just living in the moment day to day. Might sound like fun, but also there's some downsides to that. 2 extroverts could burn out, too much socializing, not enough, quiet, calm, still mind at home, right? But 2 introverts might never talk. They might just live in their own heads. I actually have a friend who told me recently that her husband often doesn't open up and talk to her about things that are going on with him. He somehow just assumes that she knows. And she has to say, "No, I can't read your mind. I don't know." And that's what happens with someone who is deeply introverted. They live in their heads a lot. So these differences force us to communicate and to compromise, and again, to create a rhythm that reflects both of you, not just one of you. God says a man leaves his family, his parents, and he clings to his wife and the 2 become one. You are forming an entity with this marriage that is a composite of you and a composite of your partner, and it exists as its own entity. And if everything has to be the way you want it to be and flow based on the way that you do things, you're gonna throw this entity, this marriage off balance. Okay, so this is something I really want you to think about. We're talking about these things in lighthearted, fun ways, but these become huge sources of conflict in marriage, right? So before we end, I want you to share with me how this episode speaks to you in your marriage. What opposite trait is going on between you and your spouse that used to really frustrate you, but maybe now it's helped you to really understand and appreciate your spouse in a deeper, better way. Okay. Or maybe it's still really, really frustrating you and you need help on how to fix that. Leave me a comment. Please tell me what's going on and subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. And I'm sure you know somebody out there who needs a reminder as well that differences are not obstacles in marriage, they are opportunities. Remember, we're not trying to be perfect in our marriage. That's a great thing to strive for, but we're never gonna actually be able to achieve that. But in order to have the kind of marriage that you ideally want, you do have to be teachable. So thanks for showing up today. Please keep showing up. I'll see you at the next episode.